everyone, Mia Paulus here. So today we're going to talk about why you should fire yourself in business. So in business, there are many hats that you wear and many spots you can fill. Visionary, CEO, marketer, salesperson, manager, and depending on the current size of your business, you may wear these and many, many more. In order to grow a scalable company, we need to make sure we have clarity over who is doing what, and part of that process may well involve firing ourselves. In this video, I'm going to share why firing yourself may be the best business decision you have ever made. Let's get started. Okay, so in this video, I'm going to talk about 3 reasons why you should fire yourself. But before I do that, I'm going to give you 1 reason why you should not fire yourself. So something that I see a lot, because I'm in the outsourcing space, is that businesses want to deflect responsibility on what they should do. So as an entrepreneur, as a visionary, or as a CEO, there's things that are your responsibility, or like process that's being handled by the outsourcing company, but you're like, hey, I'm not going to care about the data, or I'm not going to look at the how old my accounts receivable are. You know, there's certain things that you should still own, which is data, right? You want to know what is actually happening, and as a CEO, as an entrepreneur, like you need to understand the data points that are in your company. So again, don't reflect responsibility for things that are should be yours. It doesn't mean you can't have somebody else gather the data for you, but you still want to be able to take ownership of the different components. And the bigger you get, the more you can deflect ownership to other people. If you have an integrator within your company, they might look at different data than you look at. And so as you grow, it gets easier. You don't have to look at as many data points, but it's still important to know, okay, if I'm small, there's a lot that's on your shoulders as an entrepreneur. Okay, now let's officially dive in on why you should fire yourself. So the first point is you are not meant to be what I call a glorified project manager. I see people all the time talk about how I have 20 VAs that I'm managing, and to me that just feels like another job. Like, you don't want to be a glorified project manager. You are the visionary. You need to know what your role is. Let's dig in a little bit on what that role is. So let me explain a little bit about my visionary journey, and that might help you as you're kind of figuring out like who you should be and what you should be doing. So for a long time, I kind of controlled everything in the company. I have this ability to see all the gaps, and I'm like, I can play the air traffic controller really well in a company, because I'm like, oh, we're at the top, right? We can see all the things. We're like, oh, we need to fix that, and somebody needs to do that. And you get to where you can never really get out and kind of what I call look up and out. Like, as a visionary, you got to be the person looking out for the icebergs, right? You got to know what's ahead and be able to have a vision for where you want to guide your team. For a long time, this is kind of an embarrassing story, but there was about a 2-year period where I had this thought that if I could just get to the bottom of my to-do list, then I would have the time to be the visionary and the entrepreneur that I knew I needed to be. And so what I did was I literally had actually a Trello board, and every time an email would come in or something that I needed to do, I would put it on the Trello board. And I was so excited about myself. I'm like, I'm gonna just work 16 hours a day, and I'm just gonna get to the bottom of my to-do list, and then I'm gonna have all this time to be an entrepreneur I needed to be. And so I kept putting like all the emails of clients wanted this, and I was so fast to respond to clients, and I was so proud of myself. And guess what? 2 years later, 16 hours a day later, I never could get to the bottom of the to-do list. So as entrepreneurs, just remember this, we will never get to the bottom of our to-do list. We will always have more on our to-do list than we can get done. And so the question becomes, what are the things that you can get rid of, not do, eliminate? Who can do other things for you? Our role is learning to let go. This is harder than I think you guys can all relate. Letting go is not easy, right? Because we care about this. It's our baby. We care about the customers we're serving. But the thing is, it's going to hinder your growth and hinder the amount of people that you can serve. And so I did something. It was probably, I still remember the moment, and it's probably one of the hardest things I've ever done before, is I just let the balls drop. I said, okay, I have an amazing team. I'm in their way. And I realize that now more than ever, like I get in people's way, and like, Mia, we got this. You just go do your thing. I said, okay. And I gratefully let them take it now. For a long time, it was hard. And so I just let the balls drop. And it was pretty amazing what happened is you'll find that if you have a good team, they will actually pick up those balls and they will go and do it for them. And what's beautiful is if you have the right people in the right seats, that they will be able to do it 1,000% better than you ever could. I talked to somebody once and she said, hey, you know, you just need to be okay with employees being 80% as good as you. But I'll argue that statement, that when you have the right people doing the right job, they will be 1,000% better than you, and they will expose all of your weaknesses, which is a good thing because it also exposes your strengths. And the more you can start to learn your strengths and weaknesses and start to have people that can support your weaknesses, like, it's beautiful. It's a magic puzzle that fits together. Okay, so now that I've kind of gotten out of the company and I literally could walk away and my company would grow and run without me. it would be as cool because I'm a visionary and I get the team pretty excited, and we expand in ways that they might not have thought before. But at the end of the day, it would survive. But there's times in business where I've seen like, oh, they're off track with the vision. And I've actually gone purposely back in the trenches and said, I got to fix some things. And so I've done that now a few times over the last 15 years since I've stopped micromanaging everything. It's interesting. It's an interesting phenomenon because what happens is when you go in, it kind of shuts off part of your visionary brain. And I can kind of shift between a visionary, if you're familiar with like visionaries and integrator combos, I can kind of turn off my visionary brain and enhance my integrator brain. I actually love my visionary brain, but I can play the integrator role if I have to. So that's what I would do. I would go in the trenches, and I'm now a really good integrator, so I don't have to do this as much, but I had to turn on my integrator brain. And the thing that is interesting is that as my team was starting to develop and I had people starting to replace what I was doing as the integrator, I had to start pulling back out of the trenches. I had to go back into my visionary. And it's like one of the hardest things. I kind of attribute it to like a drug addict. I'm addicted to this control and this ability to be able to control everything. And now I have to go back over here and trust. I have to trust my team. I have to trust that they know what they're going to do. And that is tough. You have an amazing team. I still struggle with it, but now I'm conscious about it. Before it was something that was subconscious that I didn't really realize that was happening. But now I'm like, okay, if I go in the trenches, I know it's going to be tough. And now I can make a conscious decision on, I'm going to be out of the day-to-day by this time, and set a date for yourself, because then it'll force you to know that it's not forever, and that, hey, within 12 months, within 6 months, I want to be out of the day-to-day and playing that visionary role. And so that's something really cool, to just set a time limit for yourself and start putting steps in place to do that, because you might not be at a point where you can either afford it or you haven't found the right person. It's interesting, I read the book Rocket Fuel, and kind of around the EOS system, and I actually really don't like the book for other reasons I won't say in this. It's just a lot of tactics without a lot of principles. I'm a principle person. I like to teach people principles, and that helps create innovation versus like, here's everything. Like, it's not all one size fits all. But regardless, we still implemented a lot of the integrator visionary things they talked about in that book. So in that book, they talk a lot about visionaries and integrators. One of the things that they didn't talk about is about gradient scales. I'm a believer that, you could be a high visionary and a high integrator. But they talked about gradients related to the integrator, but not really related to the visionary. And I think there's different levels of vision people. Like, for instance, my husband's in the asphalt space, and you don't need a ton of vision to be able to run a company like that. So when I talk about your role as a visionary, understand that I'm a hyper crazy visionary. So we have a very big company with a lot of different things moving parts, but it requires a high visionary like me to be able to get that done. My husband is still a level of visionary, but not like as crazy as me. It works out great for an asphalt. There's only so much innovation you can do in the asphalt industry. Just understanding who you are, like it's still worth a read, the book, just to understand the role of a visionary, the role of an integrator, and starting to think in the terms of having different brains, like having people take personality tests. I say personality tests loosely because it's your tendencies, it's not your character. Like for me, I've actually over the years, because of having to do a lot of different things, have kind of polished a lot of my rough edges. While I have these tendencies, I've learned to realize that they can be detriments in a company. And so I've learned to either make them bigger strengths or to kind of soften over the rough edges of what they are. Okay, so hopefully I hit the first point home of the reason why you want to fire yourself is that you are a visionary and you need to be in that spot, and the importance of being in that spot, and really the importance of letting go. And that's where the biggest problem I see is not being willing to let go. So the second point is around value for your company. So what do I mean by that? Well, I didn't really realize this is a trend in business because I've been in the business world for 15 years, so I kind of took it for granted. But there's a big trend to create non-sustainable companies. What do I mean by that? Well, if the influencer left or the attractive character left, or like the business would just crumble, it wouldn't exist without the person. So a lot of influencers have created companies or things, and it wouldn't survive without them. So really what they've built is a cash flow company, right? And there's nothing wrong with certain cash flow companies. If that's what you want, that's great. But I just want you to be intentional about what else is out there. And the other thing besides a cash flow company, you can also build a value-based company where you plan to sell the company, where it increases in value and then you can go and sell it. So those are two ways you can add value in your company. My company, I want both. I want cash flow and value. There's some companies that are just trying to create value. You see this a lot in Silicon Valley, where this is a whole other conversation because I don't really agree with the model, but but they could have literally zero profit and be able to sell their company for 10x revenue. And so it drives me kind of crazy, that whole philosophy, but that is a value-based company. They're looking to sell it to the next Google or the next Facebook. And then you have cash flow only companies where maybe you see something that you can capitalize on and you know it will only be a short ride because of it's only maybe something that would be relevant during COVID or whatever is something like you can ride that cash flow wave until it dies, as long as you're realistic that it's a short-term business venture for cash flow. So it's just being mindful of that whole checks and balance, or not really checks and balances, but trade-off between, actually it's not even trade-off. You can have both. I think both can rise together. It's just a matter of what's your philosophy that you want. But regardless, if you want to create a company that is sellable and you start it with the end in mind, meaning, hey, one day I would like to sell it off because I'd like to retire, I'd like to go travel the world, I'd like to spend more time with my family, or you die and you want to leave it to your inheritance. I mean, you never know what's going to happen. Like if you can create a sustainable company, it's going to have more value. That's actually one of the metrics that they look at when they look at the risk assessment of valuing a company is, could it run without the owner? If you want to create more wealth than just cash flow, I mean, you can make massive wealth by selling your company. You know, you look at ClickFunnels, apparently this is my topic for today, but like ClickFunnels probably bringing about 100 million in revenue and they are valued at $1 billion. That is massive. Like that is a huge jump. Yeah, they have great cash flow that comes in, but their valuation is massive as well. So that's just another reason to fire yourself as a visionary. So before I go into the third reason why you should fire yourself, if you like videos like this, go ahead and like and subscribe to this channel and you'll see more of me and more of topics like this. Okay, so let's dig into the third point on why you should fire yourself as a visionary or as an entrepreneur or CEO. If you remember at the beginning part of this video, I talked about the Rocket Fuel book and how, you know, the reason why I wasn't super excited about the book was because it kind of was able to get companies to a level of success, but not what I call significance. And so to me, one of the reasons why you should fire yourself in business is so that you can make a bigger impact. See, the thing is we are unicorns. We are the 1% crazy. There are not a lot of people like us. So I put a lot of pressure on ourselves if we have one of these crazy brains to be able to get out of the trenches, stop micromanaging everything, stop managing a bunch of different VAs, even your team. Go get an integrator to manage your own in-house team. Like, get out of the company. Because if we can unleash our brain, but still be realistic of what needs to be done when, like have people around you that hold you accountable. Just because you're at the top doesn't mean you're not accountable. You're accountable to your team, and I even recommend getting a board that holds you accountable from the outside in. Get yourself out of the company, because then you can use your 1% crazy brain to be able to do some amazing impact in the world. You can think about how you can use your business to help support communities more, you know, support other nonprofit initiatives, or even giving yourself more time to spend with your family. That is a worthy cause. And so don't think you have to be a serial entrepreneur that has a bunch of business ideas. That's kind of how my brain works. But I also have 7 kids, if I haven't said that yet in a video. I have 7 kids and I have a serial entrepreneur brain. And so I've learned to balance both and to have, I say balance loosely because it's really like ebbs and flows. It's like, okay, hyper-focused here one time and then hyper-focused here. But 80% of the time, be balanced. So remember, we have a gift of getting people to rally behind our vision. And people are hungry to be a part of somebody else's vision. So if you want help being able to let go, not have to do it all, and be able to have a kind of a team around you that isn't just one VA here, one VA there. I've actually created a model called team sourcing. And I actually talk about how team sourcing applies to different phases of business. So whether you're in the startup phase, the growth phase, or the evergreen phase. So I'm putting together a free clinic. You can go to stressfreesupergrowth.com. I'll put the link in the description and in the comments. And we will talk about what you need to do at the different phases of business so you can get your business to run without you. Your business shouldn't need you. So again, go to stressfreesupergrowth.com.